Welcome to We Need to Talk Now, presented by AT&T. I'm Alicia J, and I'm here with Erica L. Ayala. And Erica, you're back. You're
Woohoo! Back. I'm back. Yes, I am. Spent almost a month in Italy, in Milano, covering the Winter Olympics.
Amazing. We were so proud of you over here, like watching every single thing that you covered. I was dropping all the comments. I don't know if you saw any of them, but I was really excited. It's an amazing thing to cover the Winter Olympics for sure. How was it? I mean, you were there for a month.
Yeah. So it was fun. I mean, this is my third Olympic Games overall, second Winter Games, and it's always hectic and crazy. And I am usually focused on one sport in the summer, basketball, in the winter at the Winter Games, hockey. So this is the one time I did not get to any other events, not even a passing glance. So it was all hockey, but thankfully there were really great hockey tournaments. So that was definitely a highlight, seeing the women capture gold for the third time. And of course the men as well. Didn't enjoy some of the stuff that happened after the men's gold medal game, but I'm honestly not surprised by it. All that goodwill for a lot of people that heated rivalry brought in was laid to question. But I think overall it was great. I have my credential here still. I got a lot of pins at this Winter Games, the most I've ever had. So pretty cool. That's always fun to go into. And there are pins that are popular, right, at every games, and then there are ones that are just kind of classic and very popular, very rare. I kind of like the old school feel, like the circa 1996, the Atlanta pins. I have a few of those that I was gifted at my first Summer Games, and they've gotten me some really great returns. And then I don't know, I think my pin style is a little different than other people, which is like everything else, but I had a lot of fun. It was a good time. It was a different experience for me, working with a different group this time around, but I had a lot of fun. And of course, as I had said before, the women showed out. We saw women from the United States specifically medal very well. Over 50% of the medals that were collected by Team USA were from women, and that's great because we know, especially in the sliding sports, there were some women's sports that were added. Elena Myers-Taylor, she is just the amazing pioneer when it comes to sliding sports, and to see her get her first Olympic gold medal, not her first medal overall, but her first Olympic gold with her sons there, that was really exciting to catch up with that news. Women's figure skating was amazing. I think overall it was a great games.
It definitely was. A lot of moments, a lot of pins. I'm like, can I hold a pin? Anyway.
Yes, we got to get you one. We got to get you one of these black rosy ones.
Yes, I definitely want that pin for sure. But out of all of that, Erica, what was your favorite moment at the Winter Games?
Wow. I think if I look on the ice, the gold medal game for women in ice hockey, because there were two storylines that I know we followed on We Need to Talk Now, but that also I was following, and that was the retirement of Hilary Knight. I add probably also Marie-Philippe Poulin, who she won a silver medal, or earned a silver medal, but had a fantastic tournament with her own kind of overcoming injury, things of that nature. And then Layla Edwards. And for Layla Edwards to connect with Hilary Knight on a goal that put her as the leader, for Hilary Knight as the leader for goals for any Team USA women's team at the Olympics, for goals, for points, and to be her last goal for Team USA, that was really exciting. Have to shout out Megan Keller with a sweet dangle for a defender. I love when defenders score in hockey. It's one of my favorite things. But again, those two storylines, talking to Layla and to Hilary the morning after they won their gold medal at the TV tower right outside of the Duomo Cathedral, that was also really special. So that stands out for sure.
Well, I was just wondering, obviously we love this coverage of the Winter Games. We love that hockey has been center stage, even though Some of it we didn't love, right? But, you know, with the games just came, you know, just visibility, enhanced visibility. And as somebody who has been covering hockey for years, been passionate about it for years, been in the forefront, how do you feel? Like, what does it feel like to see all of this coverage of hockey and for it to be center stage?
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of thoughts that cannot be easily summarized, but I think there is a moment, whether, you know, it's a different moment. I think that each Olympics that I've covered for ice hockey and where there were women's leagues that existed, we've seen the momentum draw in. I think, again, there were some things that were out of the control of the women's team that led to some of the popularity that, or the conversation that is happening now. But is it going to last? And I that's what I'm looking to see. But the Seattle Torrent hit a new attendance record, over 17,000 in their first home game back after the Olympics. Of course, that is where Hillary Knight plays. We saw that the stream, their YouTube stream, over 15,000, and almost half of those for the first game back being new viewers. So I just hope it lasts. I mean, there are some things, again, that hockey has to have a conversation about, and I've talked about that since returning from the Olympics, and that includes women's hockey. But for now, it does seem like there's some eyes on the sport. So yeah, a lot. Like I said, I could get into do a deeper dive at some point in time. But for now, I think it's just a matter of how do you seize this moment and opportunity. And we've already seen some of that. Now it's, what does that look like on a night in, night out basis?
Let's keep the moment going. Let's keep it going. You know, we've seen it happen with other sports, the continued visibility and just popularity. I know for one thing, my mom is all about the PWHL now.
Okay.
She's like looking up on how to watch it and everything like that. And I just, you know, hockey, women's hockey deserves it. They deserve it. And also people like you who have been covering it for years deserve it as well. So I just want to say that because I know it's not easy to cover something that maybe isn't as widely known as it should be, So
thank you.
Loved everything you did at the Winter Olympics and everything you've done and everything you continue to do, Erica, for sure. Well, while you were over there in Milan, I'm sure eating some great food, great food. There's been a lot of women's college basketball going on.
Oh, yes.
Right on over here. And we have to talk about UConn. UConn reaches 31-0, which is absolutely insane when you think about it. Just, you know, just winning that much consistently. Ended the regular season at Madison Square Garden, which is a historic moment. It marked the first standalone women's college basketball game at MSG. It's the 11th time in program history that UConn finished the regular season undefeated with an 85-41 win over St. John's. That was, you know, St. John's, love you. It was kind of hard to watch, but I feel like they fought. UConn is just so freaking good. Now, when you look at everything that they've done this season, you know, in 7 of the 10 previous perfect seasons, UConn went on to win the national title. That's also important to note. When you look at this season, how they are like firing on all cylinders, literally every single person on that team is contributing in a major way. The defense is just stellar. You know, what are your thoughts on UConn, you know, in this amazing feat that they've had in the regular season as they head into conference tournament play?
Yeah, I think, you know, it's something that I wrote about for CBSSports.com, looking at those undefeated seasons. And I did ask Gino Auriemma, just as we were going into the new year, what is the similarity between those teams? Now, he was like, come on now, fam. Okay, this is me paraphrasing, but the sentiment was like, come on now, fam. We like 12 games in. How you going to ask me that? That being said, it is a valid question right now. It is. You know, and in that article, I break down what he ultimately said is that you need some superstars. You need players that are playing at their peak, and not just individually, but then can bring along other key superstar level players, and then you of course need role players, and that's what UConn seems to have this season. And it's not that they didn't have that last year, but I think getting Paige Beckers, AZ Fudd, and Sarah Strong all on one accord, it took a little time. And a lot of that we know is that Beckers and Fudd have had injuries. Sarah Strong was a freshman last year, and it all culminated in a championship, but they suffered some losses. This year, they seem to be walking in stride more often than not. And even when there are some times, even that game in December that I was at where UConn was playing Iowa, Sarah Strong had a great first half, and then AZ Fudd, who was not shooting well, especially from the perimeter in that first half, she turned it on. And that's what they have. It's not everyone firing at 100% all of the time. They have a way to kind of almost double dutch, like they hop in and out as needed. And I think that's what's allowed them to have the dominance. That's what has allowed them to maintain relatively healthy. I mean, it's almost is very rare, if even possible, this day and age, to have a complete clean bill of health once you start getting into the season. But this is a team also, so they're doing all of those things in a season, Alicia. Then there's the pedigree, there's the history, there's the culture, are the expectations that are set as soon as you commit, before you even step foot on campus, before you even suit up for a practice or a training session. There is a level of excellence that you are expected to reach and that you are held accountable for night in and night out at UConn. And when you mix all of that in, and I actually do think I went with an extended metaphor for that article, now that I think about it, talking about food. I love talking about food, girl. But you need you need all of that to build a really hearty and flavorful recipe. And that's what UConn has been able to do. And we're seeing that's bearing fruit in this 25-26 season.
Yeah, and there's a standard of excellence that they just have to hit. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. In the game, they were up by 20 at the half, I think, something along those lines. And they asked Gino, like, how he felt about, how they were playing, and he was not happy. And when you're relentless like that, when you have a coach that is like, I know that you guys are better than 20 points at the half, you have the pedigree that UConn has. I mean, he actually talked about, the perfect season and what it has been like. What are the characteristics? You kind of talked about this earlier, but what are the characteristics that these teams have had when they've gone, undefeated? And he said they all kind of have similar characteristics. The ones I've been involved in, really close-knit teams that really love playing together, and you get a little bit of something from everybody that night. They've been fun to coach. And that speaks to more of what you were talking about, is the double dutch factor of this team for sure. And also, obviously, they care about an undefeated season. But AZ Fudd said after the game last night that we can't think about that. We can't, we can't care about that, because the ultimate goal is winning a championship. And we're going into our conference championship and also March. So we can't really think about this. It's not really an accomplishment that we're trying to hit. I'm paraphrasing, obviously, but that's also a mark of a good team, is when you're going to be relentless and go after this no matter what. And, every night you just got to win. And that's what UConn does. And that's how they built their, pedigree to be.
Yeah, 100%. And it just goes back to, again, all of that in service to, it's not even just the points and by how much they're winning, but how are they playing? Because listen, let's keep it a buck. You can sometimes be up and not be playing the way your coach wants you to play. You just happen to be, maybe you're getting the calls or you're making shots. But what happens when those shots don't fall? What happens when you're not getting the calls in your favor? And that's why Gino is always pushing this team. And that's why you get responses like you did from AZ Fudd. And when they stay focused on that, which is, they're young, adults, right? Teenagers to young adults. So there's going to be wavering from that. But when the team is clicking and when they can have that fun and peace and joy that Gino is talking about, that's when we see what we're seeing right now. Does it mean that they're a shoe-in to win a national championship? Absolutely not, for reasons that we'll get into when we talk later on the show about some of the other conferences. But it does, again, especially with that pedigree, put them in a very good position to repeat as champions and continue to just write another chapter of the legacy of UConn.
Well, unfortunately, a team that is quite the opposite of UConn right now, that isn't necessarily, writing the best chapter, is Tennessee. They ended the regular season on a 6-game losing streak, lost 9 of the last 11 games. They have made the Sweet 16 in 3 of the last 4 NCAA tournaments. But going into the conference tournament, Tennessee finished 8-8 in SEC play for the second straight year. However, they're coming into it on, a losing streak. And there's been a lot that is going on. There have been comments from Kim Caldwell about the team that people have talked about. Janiah Barker was, I don't know if it was official suspension. Technically, I guess yes, because they didn't bring her on a game. And so there's just been a lot going on with this Tennessee team. What are your thoughts as they go into their conference tournament and March in general for them?
Yeah, I think it's been an up and down season. I mean, we've even seen alumna who are part of TV broadcasts have some things to say about this Tennessee squad. And, on College Game Day, really having questions as to whether the discipline is there, whether the drive is there, whether the focus is there. And, Kim Caldwell has talked about that since, and saying, it's hard to get upset about critiques when she feels that she's the biggest critic, right, of her team and their performance, and that there is a lack of consistency, and and that it's not about patting ourselves on the back or being satisfied when we know we're not meeting the expectation. And so, Kim Caldwell came into a Tennessee team that wanted, to really get back to, as we were talking about UConn, a dynasty level work ethic, right? And we know that Tennessee has had that, of course, under the late, great Pat Summitt, and they've been trying to get back there. And I think it is fair to say, if this were happening elsewhere in the country, I think, yes, there's probably still questions about Caldwell and about this Tennessee program, just because it's been a seesaw. They say they want to tip their hat, or I guess rest their hat on their defense. And when they do that, and when they do it consistently, they stay in games. But when that falters, and when the players are not kind of, one band, one sound, it's very noticeable. And that makes them a team that, even if it's not the Tennessee legacy, it's a team that in today's NCAA women's basketball, a team that wants to get to a Sweet 16 and beyond, those are just things you cannot afford, because you've got South Carolina, you've got Texas, you've got UCLA, you've got the aforementioned UConn, not to mention teams like Michigan. I don't want to, listen, I want Tarika coming for me, so I'm also going to say Michigan State. You've got Ohio State. You've got Iowa State. You've got so many teams that are ready to take one of those spots. It's not guaranteed for Tennessee, for UConn, Baylor, LSU, any of these teams, South Carolina, that they're going to stay at the top of the conversation, because there's so many teams that feel like they have this chip on their shoulder and are playing underdog because their programs don't have that legacy that some of these other programs have, and they're playing well right now. So, women's basketball is not quite yet a what have you done for me lately, at least not for everyone. And so Tennessee, I think, is in a very interesting situation, is how I'll say it, Alicia, in that how much are they kind of resting on the laurels of the legacy as opposed to focusing on the here and now? And I think that is the question. And it's Kim Caldwell's team right now that's under the microscope.
Yeah, and they should be. When you end the season on a losing streak like that, and in women's college basketball, you cannot rest on legacy. You can't do that anymore. There's like the parity, we've talked about it, it's growing every day. You cannot rest on that.
No.
You simply cannot. And so there are a lot of people that are saying, should Kim Caldwell be the coach of this team? And I think, honestly, we're not going to know until we see how they do in this conference tournament and how they do in the tournament overall.
Right.
And so it's resting on that. If they don't do well, I think she's out.
Yeah, 100%. Because the data points that if she cannot turn it around, if this program cannot turn it around, what we're looking at is 8-8 in SEC play for the second straight season. So yeah, yes, you're at 500, but 8 losses towards the back end of the season, going into conference tournament, going into the NCAA tournament, not ideal.
No.
9 of the last 11 games lost, and again, Sweet 16 is not considered, and whether this is fair for today's Lady Vols team or not, it is what it is, because Sweet 16 is not a goal for a program like Tennessee.
No.
Sweet 16 is probably underperformance for a lot of people. Now, whether again that's quote unquote fair or not, it is what it is. And when you sign a commitment letter to a place like Tennessee, South Carolina, UConn, you have to know that that pressure comes with the privilege of putting on that uniform. And that goes for the coaching staff as well.
Yeah, absolute pressure on all points for sure for Tennessee right now.
Yes.
Now, somebody who we have been following, you in particular have been talking about all season long, is UCLA. And, you know, they are obviously, they've been in the top 4 all season long. They have had such success, right? Even I saw that they finished the regular season undefeated in Big Ten play. They finished the regular season on a 22-game winning streak, okay? Not a losing streak, but a winning streak. And I also thought it was really important, especially in this day and age of transfers and NIL, that Kiki Rice and Gabriela Jaquez celebrated their senior night. They're the only 2 seniors to spend their entire 4-year career at UCLA. And I think that speaks a lot to the team and the coaching, right, of the team, for players to, and I don't want to say jump ship, but, you know, there's just a lot of movement. And so I thought that was something important to note. Now, with all of this that is happening with this UCLA team and all the success they've had this year, a lot of people have been saying they kind of have gone under the radar. Would you agree with that?
I would. And we talked about this early in the season, especially when UCLA was comparative, especially to coming out like white hot out the gate last season. It almost seemed like, oh no, they lost 2 games. Here goes the struggle, you know, but that's again how we sometimes contextualize things in women's basketball. Is it fair? Absolutely not, but it is what it is. And so I think people were like, well, they're not last year's team. And so it was immediately, let's focus on something else. That's my take on it. But UCLA continued to get stronger. We know that Sienna Betts was hurt earlier in the season. She was someone that they wanted to bring into the fold underneath, among others, her older sister, Lauren. And this is a UCLA team that they don't dominate in the way that you see UConn able to dominate always, or even a South Carolina, LSU type of domination, a Texas type of domination, but they stay the course. And for me, that's what the underappreciated part of this UCLA squad is. Even thinking about that game against Michigan, where they really had to dig deep. It's not always the most dramatic comeback or the most dramatic maybe you lose the lead, but you grip it back within the waning minutes. It's not always, dramatic or sexy even, but it is UCLA Bruins basketball, women's basketball. I'm super excited. There is, I guess, a new documentary. So Corey Close had mentioned this actually when I was interviewing her at the top of the year, that they had been working on this documentary, but it's out now. I haven't seen it yet, but some of the things there, you're seeing some of that edge that doesn't always come out publicly, but that this team has. They speak to each other very directly. They open themselves up to that honesty. And that to me is why I've seen little bits and pieces of that, or I've heard Corey Close over the last year and a half talk about that. And for me, that's always why I don't count UCLA out. And we see that they're not the number 1 overall seed, but they are a number 1 seed in all bracketology right now.
Well, I saw the trailer for that doc this morning and I was like shocked because, like you said, UCLA isn't necessarily, that's not shown around them. there's actually not a lot that is shown. We get the quotes from Corey Close, like her saying that, this is one of the best teams in UCLA history. She's always very vocal about that. Yep. But otherwise, we don't really see a lot of that where we do see it with other teams. And I think it could be like a blessing or a curse, right? Like, I actually loved seeing it. And I can't wait to watch that documentary because I want to see more of it. But then also, there is power in being the team that not a lot of people are maybe pointing out, but you're taking care of business. But the part about that is you have to take care of business. We saw what happened in the tournament last year. And so for them, that's key, is like, you know who you are, you know what you've been doing all season. You don't need other people to see it, but you got to take care of business. But I actually personally love to see it. Like, I really want to watch that doc.
Yeah, I'm here for it. And again, same thing. Storylines don't guarantee success. As much as we in the media would love to always say that is the guarantee, what we know is that this is a hungry UCLA team. They embrace their success, especially over time. They've been able to contextualize where they stand in history. And when I spoke to Lauren Betts, it wasn't about reflecting on that or even patting themselves on the back for that. It was taking it for what it is and then approaching the new season for what it is. Another opportunity to prove what they're all about. And so again, it's not the resting on the laurels. It's not that legacy, because the UCLA legacy, they've always been around, but in women's basketball, that legacy goes back to the Annie Myers days, pre-NCAA days, when they won a championship in 1978. And so they have plenty still to prove, getting to their first Final Four in the NCAA era last year. But now what happens? Is it Final Four or bust, or is it national championship game or bust? Those are things that UCLA is going to have to answer. I still think that, though, they are a team, while expected to get to, I would say, probably at least a Final Four again, there is a lot of that chip on the shoulder that they are experiencing, because you don't want to be the team that got there once and then it took another however many 40 some odd years to get there again. They want to be a perennial powerhouse in women's basketball. And I think they're on their way. But again, you have to get those results. UCLA has been able to do that in the regular season. We know that they had their challenges last year, but were able to overcome a very good USC team last year in the Big Ten tournament, and then also, of course, in NCAA tournament. So, I mean, I'm very curious to see how the chips fall. And we're going to get into the conferences, because it's not USC this year that UCLA has to worry about, but there are definitely some teams that are hot on their heels.
There definitely are. And we definitely will be talking about that a little later on in the pod. But before we do that, we got to take a break, because we got a lot to talk about. So we're going to take a little break, and we'll be back to talk all about the She Believes Cup after this. Come on, NWSL. Like, I'm so excited about the season. Everything is kicking off. It feels like so many sports to watch, which we love. We love it here. Mm-hmm. So, but we got to talk about the She Believes Cup. The She Believes Cup kicks off, for people who don't know, it's an annual invitational tournament based in the United States. US played Argentina. 2-0 is what we won the match, I should say, excuse me. And it's just exciting to see, USWNT play, to see, the team and how it's coming together. I personally loved watching every moment of this. There's a lot of work to be done. There's a lot of work to be had. But when you watch this and see it kicking off, are you excited about this team that is coming together, Erica?
Yeah, I think, the U.S. women's national team for soccer has been in this really interesting phase where for such a long time, whether it was the 99ers, even predating the 99ers, and then, the group just after the 99ers, there's always been this core, right, that come up together. And usually that core kind of reigns supreme, so to speak, for upward of the next decade, right, of their careers. And I think you're seeing a little bit of that switch. And so, yes, that does mean that some of these friendly tournaments, they can be a little rough, and because there's a lot of experimentation. And I think under Emma Hayes, you've seen that she really wants to embrace a youth movement. Now, of course, every team wants to find their core, their identity, their center, and who's going to be a part of that. But with so much happening in women's soccer and women's football globally, including that you don't always have your stars that are in the NWSL. Sometimes they're on loan elsewhere and then they'll come back, or vice versa. So it's still this really interesting revolving door that we don't necessarily see in other sports. But I think that's what makes it exciting. And so, you see that you get two different goal scorers, Lindsay Heaps and Jaden Shaw, who we've talked about so much. Jaden Shaw is on one side of the spectrum I was just talking about, and Lindsay on the other side of that spectrum. And to see that those two combine, or I should say get on the score sheet and get the 2 goals for the women's national team, I think is perfectly indicative of what's happening now. It's kind of like stir all the ingredients together, stir the pot, and see what comes together.
Yeah, and we definitely are, and Hayes definitely is. Emma Hayes talked about that she's using this camp to help solidify her core senior group as the team looks ahead to the World Cup qualifiers in the fall and the long-term future of the program. And she really is looking at every single thing meticulously. She also said that they had much better emotional control yesterday, which I definitely agree with. There was a lot going on in that match yesterday, for sure. And, I just think overall, it was, it wasn't the prettiest win, I would say, but it was something that is helping the U.S. get back to where they want to be, not only in the long term, but also in the short term. They're trying to win. They're looking to regain the title after losing to Japan last year. They won 5 straight editions prior to the 2025 loss. And so, they're looking at this big picture, but also they're looking at this picture as well, a smaller picture when it comes to this team. One thing that I did not like to see is that Trinity Rodman unfortunately hurt her back. Well, it looks like she hurt her back again. She was holding her back. We can't say definitively, but definitely a big loss for this team and her team, her NWSL team right now. And I just hope that she gets back and is feeling better. This is definitely an ongoing thing for Trinity, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's really tough. You never want to see a player of that caliber. It was a huge offseason storyline, of course, just figuring out where the NWSL and the Players Association were going to land with her Washington Spirit contract, to your point of her also, if this is a ongoing or something serious that keeps her out, that could impact the Spirit as well. But we already knew that 2/3 of the Triple Espresso were going to be out of this particular go round with the national team. So Trinity Rodman being one part of that, unfortunately injured. But then you also have Sophia Smith and Mal Swanson now, but some know her as Mal Pugh, who are making their way back from maternity leave. So I think, again, that's just an opportunity. It's an opportunity for some of the younger players that are coming up. I think it's also worth mentioning that Carolina Macario was also unfortunately out with injury. So, as much as this is an evaluation, we also know that we should assume that there will be some moving parts that weren't available this go round that will be available as you mentioned, Coach Hayes gets a little closer to qualifiers.
Yeah, you talked about young players and young talent to watch, and somebody that I'm so excited to watch is Giselle Thompson, sister obviously to Alyssa Thompson, but anytime you could get a sister thing going, I love that. Yes. Never knew how much I missed you. Anyways,
yes.
You can go down the line. Obviously, we watched it. Obviously.
That's it.
But one of the most, promising young defenders in the player pool likely could be at the next summer's World Cup. And I love to see it. Is there any specific player that you are looking to watch?
I think Jamise Joseph for me is someone that I'm excited to see. It falls into that category of doesn't have a lot of caps, but this is an opportunity right now. Someone that is probably a long shot. For a World Cup roster, just given that she has a very few caps as of right now, but someone that I think we want to keep an eye on for the future. But again, when you have these exhibitions, aka the She Believes tournament, when you have NWSL play, that's how players like this midfielder who's with Chicago, 23 years old, this is her opportunity to show that she can run with people who are World Cup champions, who are Olympic gold medalists, who have international caps, many more than she does. So I think it's someone who, again, especially once the NWSL starts, is someone that I'm looking to see how she fares.
Well, you know what else I'm looking for is a fit check, because Emma Hayes came through with the fit, okay? She had the cowboy hat on, the crisp white shirt. She just looked tailored, fun. We can't see the shoes here, but love the shoes as well. She came off that bus and was like, I'm here. And I absolutely love it. I want to see more fits. Like, I know it's not about outfits, but I want to see more of this from Emma Hayes. I said, okay, girl.
leaning into the culture of it all.
Yeah, she actually talked about this, I want to say post game yesterday, and I guess she was at the Grand Ole Opry. She went there, and she absolutely is enamored with country music. Didn't know this about Emma Hayes. Maybe I've been in the dark, but didn't know about it. But I love to see it. Anytime you can incorporate a cowboy hat, I'm here for it.
There you go. Yeah, there you go. I love that.
Yeah, I do too. So I'll be on the look for the fit for the next game when they play Canada, I believe, is coming up on Wednesday in the She Believes Cup. Well, Erica, from that tournament to other tournaments, we're going to be talking women's college basketball again in the Guarantee of the Week presented by AT&T. Erica, it's Champ Week, which I can't even believe we're saying, because this season has flown by. Yeah. We're going to be doing a little bit of guaranteeing on who we think will win each of the Power 4 conference tournaments. This is a little sticky, especially in one for sure. But let's talk SEC. South Carolina 14-1 in conference play. Vanderbilt 12-3 in conference play. Texas 12-3 in conference play, and LSU 11-4 in conference play. This is such a hard tournament to win, and I can't wait to watch every single moment of this conference tournament. Who do you think has it?
Ooh, so listen, I would love to lean into two storylines here. One being that Vanderbilt, after being so close to remaining an undefeated team, just comes back and grabs SEC. That would be huge for what we know Shea Ralph and company are trying to build there. Another storyline is, can Texas get their clap back on South Carolina? They've been neck and neck with them for the last handful of seasons, but just have not been able to get over the hump, whether it's in conference tournament or the NCAA tournament. So South Carolina reigns supreme. So with all of that said, as much as I would like to lean into those two storylines, I think I'm taking South Carolina.
I am too. And I think it's where they're at right now. We've talked about this with South Carolina all season long, is they have had moments that are building that character and also building as you go into conference play and tournament play, you know that you can overcome. And I think that South Carolina has definitely done that. I love the way they're playing right now. They've also won 3 seasons in a row. Now, they didn't have the best game against Kentucky, but I think that also was placed in the best spot for them going into this, because they know that they can't play with anybody. So I just, man, it's a hard one. And I literally cannot wait to watch it. The SEC always delivers on big moments. So we definitely are expectant of those. However, I do think that South Carolina will ultimately win. Now, going into the Big Ten, we just talked about UCLA. They're 17-0 in conference play on a 21-game winning streak, which is the second longest active behind UConn. But then there's Iowa. There's Michigan. Shout out to Tarika again. But do you think UCLA has it on lock?
Oof. I feel like I'm getting caught up with the term on lock. I think they're the favorites. I think they come in the favorites for all of the reasons that we've already talked about. But to say they have it on lock, I think Michigan is my team to really wreck it, to wreck somebody's bracket. But Ohio State is also here. You've got Maryland, who has had an up and down season, I think it's fair to say. Iowa is a team we've talked about throughout the season, Alicia. I still think, though, Michigan is probably the team that if someone is going to topple UCLA in Big Ten, it's going to be Michigan. But I would still say that UCLA is the favorite going in. We know it was close, but they did get that win over Michigan when it mattered in the regular season, and we know they have that in them. But Michigan can also erase a UCLA deficit with the quickness, as we also saw. So I'm keeping an eye on Michigan, but I think we go in with it being UCLA's to win.
Yeah, if UCLA keeps it steady, tried and true, as they have all season, and know who they are, don't even listen to any of the noise or anything around them, I think they have it. They have it. That's who I would lean towards for sure. But again, this season, we've talked about it. Anyone can get it. And that's also the beauty of the conference tournaments and the tournament in general. So
yes.
Now, the Big 12. The Big 12, Erica. TCU is 14-3 in conference play on a 5-game winning streak. West Virginia, 13-4 in conference play. Baylor is 13-4 in conference play. And Texas Tech is 11-6 in conference play. These numbers are very, very similar. Very similar. Some are dead on. Who are you guaranteeing to win the Big 12?
Oh man, this is another tough one. Texas Tech, we know, had a nice run earlier this season. I think I'm leaning into the TCU of it all. I think because of a lot of the numbers that you gave, momentum is going to be important here. And TCU has that comparative to these other teams when we look at really the last 3 seasons, and that might be even still a little conservative. We know they've come through a lot and they're starting to steady and anchor, create that foundation that TCU wants to be known for. So Olivia Miles, of course, coming over didn't hurt any. So
at all.
So I think I'm going TCU for this one.
I would love to see TCU run it back. That would be 2 years in a row that they would win the conference tournament. And I think they're rolling right now. Like you said, the Olivia Miles of it all is definitely a factor. But West Virginia has a real shot at this. West Virginia has been throwing people upsets this year. I like the grit that they have. They're coming off of a huge win on senior night over Cincinnati, I believe. It was a huge win. And I don't know. I really think that they are poised. They're poised to be able to take the conference tournament. I'm looking for them to do it. I really am.
All right. I mean, I'm not mad. Like I said, I'm not mad. I'm not mad at it at all. I can see it.
I'm not mad either. So come on, let's go, West Virginia. Now the ACC. This is the last one that we're gonna talk about and focus on. The ACC, Duke. All right, we've been talking Duke all year. 16-1 in conference play. Louisville is 15-2 in conference play. UNC 13-4, and it's been a wild season over there in the ACC. But who do you have winning the tournament?
Ooh, see, now, y'all, I know you know this, Alicia, but I was ready to come with my receipts for all that conversation that we had to have about whether Karen Lawson was doing XYZ and was she the right choice for USAB, and, Duke taking some of those early losses. I was like, wait a minute. I told y'all, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it, sweetheart. Don't worry about it. And then Duke and UNC put on a show. as we was preparing for this here podcast, shout out to Lindsay Gibbs and Isabel Gonzalez, just always. And happy birthday, Isabel, as of the day we're recording this. But also, yeah, happy birthday, girl. But also Lindsay was at that game. UNC is a team that I love talking about momentum. It's a great article over at CBS Sports about how they really are just hunkering down. And they had after a loss to Duke earlier in the season, they really were just like, what is our version? What is really our team? What are the two things that we're focused on? And they did that. And they were able to hunker down, get the win most recently against Duke. So I love a UNC story here. Historically, outside of women's basketball, Duke is not my favorite institution to support, based off of, very long held, more fan beliefs when I was growing up. But these are the two teams. And it's a toss up for me now. So what I will say to give an actual answer as I close out my thoughts here is I'm leaning towards Duke. And if it's not Duke, it's going to be the Tar Heels for me. But I think the give and take that we've seen from them, it all gets heightened when we get to conference tournament. Of course, NCAA tournament, which we're expecting both will be able to, really show what they can do there. But I'm giving the edge to Duke right now. But they really have to be about it when they play UNC, because UNC, they ready now. They got, a little proof of concept against Duke in, that most recent memory. And that could be a problem come conference tournament time.
Well, I'm going UNC just for the chaos. That's what I want. Just for the chaos.
I love it.
It's hard for me. I mean, when you look at just the ACC period and these three teams that we broke down, it's hard because all of them could do it, but I'm going UNC for the chaos.
I know,
I'm here for it.
And I know somebody mad I didn't even talk about Louisville. I mean, I'm sorry, fam. I'm sorry. I said what I said. What I will also say is, Louisville could come and grab it all. Be like, that's how it's going? No. We got something else to say. Louisville is a tried and true team. Again, one of those teams that's really trying to be a part of that pedigree conversation. They're in the throes of it, I would say, looking for just a stronghold and getting a win when everyone else is looking at UNC and Duke, that can really bode well for that Louisville team. But I'm still saying it's Duke's going in. But yeah, I'm for chaos too.
Yes, chaos all around for sure. And I know we're not the only ones who have opinions on this. All of you, please drop in the comments below who your picks are for these conference tournaments and just in general overall when it comes to the NCAA tournament. Who do you got? Make sure you're joining in on the conversation. We love talking with you and hearing what you think. And also subscribe, because I love the comments, but if you're not subscribed, you're not going to be locked into all of these shows that we're having, because there's a lot of them leading up to the Women's Final Four. And we're going to be at the Final Four this year, so you won't want to miss that at all. Mm-hmm. And something else you won't want to miss is our last segment, and we're going to have it right after this break.
This is why we do this every March.
Major slam!
It is a basketball party.
It's March! Expect the unexpected!
Yes, expect the unexpected in March for sure. It's officially March. I still can't believe that. I still can't believe I'm saying that. And we just talked about the conference tournaments. Those are on the way. The regular season is pretty much finished, which also means that we have a bigger picture of bracketology. And so, obviously you have the 1 seeds. They're the same as they have been. The last 4 in: Virginia, Virginia Tech, Colorado, SDSU. It's important to note that Virginia lost to Virginia Tech 83-82. Wow. Okay. I missed that one. 83-82. Colorado lost to BYU 75-62. And SDSU beat South Dakota 82-49. Now, the first 4 out are ASU, Stanford, Mississippi State, Richmond. ASU lost to number 20 Texas Tech 58-51. Richmond beat St. Joseph's 72-61. Mississippi State lost to number 6 LSU 72-63. And Stanford beat Clemson 85-50. So looking at this bracketology, where we're kind of at in the bigger picture, is there anything that stands out to you as like wrong? Anything you would change?
I think overall it's pretty solid. There's some of the teams first in, first out where, I think it's really a toss up. We've talked about it before, whether it's bracketology, the poll, kind of wins and losses mean different things when your team is, for all intents and purposes, at quote unquote a different level when it comes to notoriety, familiarity, and quite honestly, winning history in women's basketball. So like a team like Richmond or even Rhode Island, very deservedly so, Rhode Island has been a part of our bracketology, but Rhode Island is sharing a regular season tournament with George Mason, who is the conference tournament defending champions when it comes to, that A10. So it's just little things like that. And I'm sure, I don't follow every conference as closely as some others. Obviously, Big Ten and A10, those are the media days that I cover. So following those teams throughout the season, following what UConn has been doing. But there's those little intricacies in every conference, Alicia, that I think it always makes it a little hard when it comes to how these teams fare in the bracket. I mean, we just talked about the ACC, right? And, where do we see Duke and Louisville kind of on a level playing ground comparative to what Duke has done this season versus comparative to Louisville, what they've done in, their entire breadth of work. Is that fair? Is it right? I mean, you can always nitpick things. I'm sure there are always things that are missed, but overall, I think it's a pretty solid showing of what we've seen throughout the season.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. I think the biggest thing about whatever the final bracket will become, as that unfolds, is that I think is going to be busted really early on. That's what I think. Yeah, it definitely will. In general, I'm okay with it. I'm okay with it. There's nothing that I wanted to get up on, my soapbox and talk about specifically, but I definitely 1000%, as we've been saying all year, think that it will be busted.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see. And even, there are assumptions that are also made when you have a bracket that goes out ahead of conference tournament. How much does a conference tournament performance impact, not necessarily where we see people in the bracket, but how those teams will then perform once we get to the NCAA tournament. So that's something to keep an eye on as well.
Well, speaking of a tournament, I hear that you're calling a pretty big game coming up soon.
Yes, that's right. CAA action. CBS Sports Network will carry the CAA Women's Championship game, which will be held in Washington, D.C., and I will be the analyst on that game. This will be my second CBS Sports broadcast. I'm hoping that I don't get a winter snowstorm like we did in Dayton, Ohio. We made it work. We had a good time, and we were the only show on because the show must go on. But I'm looking forward to being in D.C. for that one. And the CAA, my alma mater, Elon University, is now in the CAA. They're currently sitting, I believe, in 6th in the women's standings. So, hey, we'll see if they make a deep run.
Come on, Elon. Let's go. Let's go. We definitely look forward to watching you call that game. And we look forward to being with all of you on the next episode of We Need to Talk Now, presented by AT&T. We'll see you on the next one. We have like 14 of these coming up. So we'll see y'all.
Bye.